Hey gang, today we're going to talk about gamification and how it relates to health. You know, a really easy question to ask is why in the world are we talking about gamification in terms of health? And I think the best answer to that question is to think about health and define health better. To really understand what we mean by health and then, understand under the hood what it means to be healthy. So, like I said, what do I mean by health? What I mean is more than just your physical body. If you were to work out every day and eat all the right foods, you would be healthy in one aspect of life. But you might be, completely ignoring other people, or you might be spending all of your money on weight equipment and not using it in other ways that you want to. And if that's the case, then what we mean by health means much more than just to be a health human. It means much more than just being physically fit. What do we mean by health? And I define health in these 5 axes: thriving in both physical, relational, financial, a sense of meaning and purpose, and intellectual health. Right? So by that I mean physical health is easy. That's things like what you put into your body, how you move about the world. It also means like how you spend your time. So if you were to spend all of your time watching Netflix, I probably would say you're not really engaging your physical body in a healthy way. Relational health. So how type of friendships do you have with other people that are your friends? Type of relationships do you have with people that are family, that are your spouse or significant other? Thriving financially. I don't mean Jeff Bezos, where everybody has to be a gajillionaire. I mean, do you have the financial resources, and are you deploying them in ways that aligns with the overall vision that you have for your life? If you're just reacting just to income just comes in and I immediately spend all of it just to handle my bills, that's not really helping you move ahead in any particular way. And so that's not really thriving financially. I'd argue too that even if you were to be Jeff Bezos and have a gajillion zillion dollars and you're just piling it up inside of a giant money bin and not spending on anything that means anything to you, then that's probably also not being financially thriving. A sense of meaning and purpose. We're not automatons, we're not robots, we're not androids. With just simply having our financial stuff in order, having our relationship stuff in order, and having our physical sense of physical bodies in order, it's going to mix something. And we all have a sense of needing to feel a sense of meaning and purpose, that our lives matter, that we're actually impacting the world in a way that we think is healthy and good. And then last, we all have a sense of intellectual health, that we need to be thriving as best we can, given the brains that we've been given, to really leverage the intellectual strength and capacity that we have. And not only are these 5 different axes of our lives, but there are also 5 different priorities in our lives. So it's not just these are the 5 things you need to watch out for in order to be thriving and healthy, but also you need to understand that there's priorities and constraints here. You can be really fully invested in any one of these and at the same time be sacrificing other ones. And you can't really make all of them equal, because at some point you're going to have to choose this one or that one. You're going to have to choose, do I take the job where I make more money, but it means moving away from everybody that I know and love, or do I stay put in the job where I'm at, where I'm not making quite as much money as I could, but my relational strengths are stronger? And that priority order really is an individual thing. This might be your order, or this is mine. Let me give you an example of this, practical. I got kids. When we moved to Oxford, we moved onto a property that's a lot of land. And mowing the lawn where I live now is way more time consuming than it used to be before we moved to Oxford. It used to take me, 45 minutes a couple times a week to knock it out. Once we moved to Oxford, I got one of these riding lawnmowers and thought I'd be able to knock it out really quick. Got on the thing, mowed the lawn, and came inside, and it was 2.5 hours later. Now look, if I mow my lawn twice a week, that's 5 hours a week. That's a lot of time sitting on a lawnmower, especially during the summertime, when that's an opportunity for me to spend time with my kids. My relationship with my kids is much higher priority to me than my lawn looking nice. And so I had to solve this problem. It's really easy. For me, I'm thinking about these priorities, and I'm realizing financial is my lowest priority. As long as I'm doing well financially, I'm going to be spending my financial capital, my financial resources on the things that are above it. So I'm going to spend my financial capital in order to get a membership to the gym because I care about my physical health. I'm going to spend my financial capital in order to buy books from Amazon because I care about my intellectual health. Or, in this example, really easy decision. to spend money to hire some high school kid to mow my lawn so that I could spend time with my kids in order to invest in my relational capital. So understanding there's kind of these 5 aspects of what we mean by health, and when we're thinking about this next project, as an aside, I want you to be thinking, which of these 5 do you want to address with your app that you design? But in all of these things, to be successful in all of them, be thriving in all of them, takes something, and it takes time. It takes a long time to be thriving in any one of these. And the problem with that is that humans are really bad at thinking long term. So how much time does it take to do some of these things? I just kind of picked a couple things. So how much time does it take to get in shape physically? I don't care if you're doing cardiovascular training or resistance training. It's going to take about 6 weeks for you to see any change in your body in the mirror. It's going to take about 12 weeks for somebody else to notice. That's a long time, especially that it sucks every single time that you work out and you're sore the next day. How long does it take to really build solid relationships? It says studies have been done to show that casual friends takes about 50 hours of interaction. Real friends takes about 90 hours. Close friends, 200 hours. Same group of researchers also looked at how long does it take to find some successfully married couples that are very happy and ask them a question. How many days did it take for you to realize that this was the person that you wanted to marry? They averaged 172 days. 172 days. That's actually probably less than you would think, but that's a lot of time. What about taking care of yourself financially? It takes about 11 years to get out of $15,000 worth of credit card debt, which is pretty close to the American average, by the way, which is shocking and scary, but that's a different issue altogether. It takes about 21 years to pay off a bachelor's degree. Holy crap, you better be really smart about your bachelor's degree. Are you sure you're maximizing every single minute that you're in class? Are you sure that you're going after every single scholarship that you could? Are you sure that you're really learning what you need to learn for your future? It's going to take a while for you to pay this sucker off if you're going into debt over it. Or just something as simple as a car. It takes an average of 63 months for someone to pay off. And that's not just the bad side of financial. In my mind, debt is the bad side. What about even the good side takes a long time. So here's a graph of what happens if you invest your money. There's this thing called the miracle of compound interest, which is if I have $100 and I invest it in a mutual fund in the stock market, and that mutual fund grows at an average rate, we'll just say 8%, even though 8% is probably high, but we'll just say 8%. What that means is that after the first year, if I invest $100, I suddenly have $108. And if I let it sit there and continue to invest at 8%, it's not that I'm going to, and then I throw another $100 into the pile. It's not that the second year I now have the first $100 plus the second $100 and then 8% of the second $100. No, that's not what happens. It's not that I get $216 total at the end of the 2 years. It's that I take the $108 that I invested, that I made in the first year, and roll that over. So the 8% is on top of the $108, and then I throw in another $100. That's called compound interest. And while it seems very small at first, over time it grows and grows and grows very much. So you can see here, this is 2 different graphs. What happens if you were to scrounge together, this is a challenge for you, what would happen if you were to scrounge together $2,000 this year and invest right now in a mutual fund in the stock market, which you can do in Robinhood right now, an app on your phone. You can do it right now. If you were to start doing that, the blue line is you. So you invest $2,000 when you're 19, you invest $2,000 when you're 20, and you do that for 8 years. So until you're 27, every single year you're investing $2,000. Now I know as a college student that seems like a lot of money, but once you get a real job, it's going to get a little bit easier to do that sort of thing. But say you stop investing at age 27. Okay, so it's real hard work right now, but you just let off and don't invest another penny for the rest of your life after age 27. Look at that blue line. The miracle of compound interest means that you have almost $500,000 by the time you retire when you're 65. Okay, what happens if you don't invest right away? You don't invest when you're 19. You wait until you're 30 to start investing. And you do the same thing. You invest $2,000 every single year. It's a little bit easier to do when you're 30 because you're making more money. But look what happens. Because of the miracle of compound interest, if you invested $2,000 when you're 30, you'd have to do that every single year up until retirement, and you'd still have less money than the person that invested when they were 19. That's the impact of investing early. That's the impact of compound interest. That's just proving again that financial success and thriving takes time. What about intellectually? It takes about 3 to 5 years to get a graduate degree. We read books about the average person between 25 and 100 pages an hour, depending on how interesting the content is, how difficult it is, etc. The point of all this is not a bunch of numbers. The point of all this is that all of this stuff takes time. And not just a little bit of time, a lot of bit of time. It reminds me of two different things. First, it reminds me of this great proverb that I kind of remind myself constantly about, that, in order for something to be great, you got to have people that are willing to invest in it, and maybe they don't see the benefit from it. Or, reminds me of the 10,000-year clock project. If you know much about design and technology, you've probably heard of this guy, Kevin Kelly. Kevin Kelly is founder of Wired, one of the co-founders of Wired magazine, futurist, really influential guy in the early introduction to the internet and thinking about what it could mean. Things like Napster, the iTunes Music Store, etc. were greatly influenced by Kevin Kelly, as well as a whole bunch of Hollywood movies were all based on Kevin Kelly's ideas. Kevin Kelly is partnered with Jeff Bezos from Amazon, and they are building a 10,000-year clock in the Sierra Diablo mountain range. This giant clock buried in the ground, and the whole vision of the project is just to encourage people to think more and more long term. Don't just think about what's going to be good for you in the next month, the next 6 months, the next year, or even for your lifetime, or even for your family's lifetime, but also just be thinking even bigger. Be thinking about what's good for humanity, what's good for the world at a 10,000-year cycle. And that's where gamification comes in. We can use gamification to iteratively improve our lives because, let's be honest, we're really bad at thinking long term. We're really good at thinking short term. Why does, somebody die of a heart attack after a lifetime of eating cheeseburgers? Because cheeseburgers are awesome. Cheeseburgers are delicious. They're also very short term. And so it's actually feels great in the short term and is deadly in the long term. And dude, that is true for so many things that we do. Well, right now it feels good, but in the long term it's destroying us. We're really bad at thinking long term, not only about what's dangerous for us, but we're also really bad about thinking long term about what's good for us. Gamification is one of the ways that we can make that smaller. So we can see benefits faster so that we can see these small, short-term benefits that are applied over the long haul, so that with these short-term benefits, that over the long haul we have long-term benefits. Here's a definition I came up with of gamification. Taking existing products, goods, and services and integrating game mechanics in order to increase engagement, encourage repeat visits, build excitement, and ultimately change behavior. In other words, if we can leverage gamification for health, it's gambling for good. This is some rock formation in one of my favorite places in the world, which is Bryce Canyon and National Park. And these rocks were carved over eons of erosion. It's the same thing with us. If we want to become the best versions of ourselves, it's going to take eons of work in order to iteratively improve ourselves some little teeny amount every single day. And that little teeny amount does not give us the benefit. We don't see the benefit right away. So it's really easy to bail on it. And that's where gamification comes in. And that's what I'm going to be diving into in Project 3. All right, so how do we actually go about gambling for good? And the way that we do that is we have to understand our brains a little well. And this is kind of psychology 101. But you got to understand what is motivators for folks. And motivators kind of break down into two different types, intrinsic and extrinsic. You can think of this as internal or external. In other words, something that's coming from deep inside of your heart to something that's coming from outside into you. And just some examples of intrinsic and extrinsic motivators. So intrinsic would be like a sense of autonomy. So you're going to be motivated more to do a job if you have a sense that you can control how that job gets done. Or you're going to be motivated to continue to do something if you're feeling that you're getting a sense of mastery of it. Or you're going to have a really strong sense of purpose. So for instance, right now, all of you, hopefully, are motivated to stay indoors. COVID-19 is out there, and we want to protect people, we want to protect ourselves. Now, you're not staying indoors for your own health. You look at the data on this, and the chances of, unless you're immunocompromised, unless you're, older than I am, then you're probably not in a high level of danger from a health perspective. But you have grandparents and parents and people that are older than you that you care about and love that are inside that high-risk population. And so you have a strong sense of purpose about staying indoors. Because if you stay indoors, you're going to slow the spread of it so our healthcare systems aren't overrun. And so those people can get the kind of care that they need if they do happen to get sick and it gets serious. So you have a strong intrinsic motivator, a strong sense of purpose behind sitting inside of your room. Progress. If you can see that you're progressively getting better over time, that's a very strong motivator. And then if, because of what you do, increases the amount and quality of social interactions that you have, that's a strong motivator. Extrinsic motivators are things, again, from the outside coming in, and extrinsic motivators would be things like rewards. So these are carrots, right? Like things that you can get, they're given to you. So when I was a hiring manager, if I gave somebody a raise or a bonus for doing a good job, that would be a reward. Punishment is the opposite. That's the stick. That's when my kids get in trouble and they get put in timeout. That's an extrinsic motivator. A sense of competition, competing with other people, that's an extrinsic motivator. And hey, this is just fun. It's just fun to do this thing. That's an extrinsic motivator. The context that you're in is external to yourself, and it's fun. It makes you want to do stuff. And how this integrates with what we talked about last time about habit formation is you got to remember, habit formation starts with cue, goes to craving, response, and reward. Now, when you think about it, the reward for all of those healthy behaviors that we've talked about, if you want to grow in financial health, you want to grow in relational health, you want to grow in physical health, etc., 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 all of those things, in the short-term reward is almost non-existent. In fact, it might actually hurt to do the thing. It's actually good for you. And so the reward circuit gets short-circuited. And so the reward never produces a craving in you. But with games, we can provide artificial rewards in this cycle that will trigger cues and cravings so that you can engage in the response more. So let's think specifically about what those rewards could be. They could be, if I'm using the same word to mean two different things. And on the left-hand side, I mean reward in the circle, the habit cycle. And on the right-hand side, I mean rewards as an extrinsic motivator. But rewards can be things like points. They can be like things like badges and levels. They can be things like progress bars or virtual currency. They can also be things like randomization. What's randomization from a reward standpoint mean? This is a really crucial one to understand. So there's been lots of studies on animals, and let's say you take a dog, put it in a cage, and you have a button, and when that dog presses the button, a treat pops out. If every single time they press the button, a treat pops out, and then after, 20 times, the button is deactivated. Every time they press the button, the treat doesn't pop out. The dog is smart, and within 4, 5, 10 times pressing the button, the dog will realize the button doesn't do any work, and doesn't do the job anymore, and they'll stop pressing the button. However, if you randomize it, so at first they press the button, and they get a treat. Second time they press the button, they get a treat. Third time they get to press the button, they don't get a treat. Fourth time they do. Fifth time they do. Sixth time they don't. Maybe they don't for 3 or 4 in a row, and then they get it for 3 or 4 in a row, that kind of randomization. And then you deactivate the button. The dog will press that button for the rest of its life. And that's because the randomization has trained it that sometimes when you press the button, you get the reward. Sometimes you don't. So always press the button. And if you think that humans are smarter than that, you haven't been to Vegas. And if you walk in and you see people in front of slot machines and they're pulling that lever, it's the exact same thing. Rewards are randomized, and so they're just constantly driven to pull the lever, pull the lever, pull the lever. And there's this incredibly strong craving. In fact, I would argue probably the worst thing in the world for you when you walk into Vegas is to win right away. Because then you think that thing is always coming, and you're always chasing it for the rest of your time there. Other types of rewards would be competition. And by competition, I don't mean competition with yourself. This is probably the best type of competition. So for instance, if I were to try to compete with Steph Curry in basketball, I would get destroyed because he is, infinitely better than I am at basketball. However, if I were to compete with myself, and how would I go about competing with myself in basketball? Compete with myself by doing something like, hey, given an X number of shots on basket, what's the Y number that I actually make? And over time, am I getting a better percentage of shots taken actually go in? That's competition with myself. And why is that better? Because it's unfair to compete with anybody else. You're the only one that has your specific combination of background, physical liabilities, etc., that has produced who you are, and so you should be competing with yourself, not with other people. This is why I think things like Instagram, Snapchat, other social media are so insidious. It's because they make us compare ourselves to other people's lives when really we should be comparing ourselves to how we were yesterday. Are we slightly better than we were yesterday? Then great, we're on a great path. But just because Sally has a better vacation than me, that makes me feel bad because I'm in competition with Sally. Other competitions are streaks. I'm sure that you know lots of people that use Snapchat, and sometimes you might have a Snapchat streak conversation going that you're going to keep going just so you can maintain the streak. Streak is just another way of competing with yourself. And then finally, what we mean by just kind of normally what we mean by competition, public rewards, leaderboards, that kind of thing. Another kind of external reward, an extrinsic motivator, would be making sure things are fun and game-like. How do we make things fun and game-like? We offer meaningful choice, so people can choose to do something or not. They're not locked in. It makes it feel like it's a game. Having very clear onboarding. You know, if I never walked into a gym and I take out my app that's for muscle training and I launch it for the first time, it's a blank screen and says, "What exercise do you want to do?" It's like, well, dude, I don't know. That's a barrier. That's a wall. That's a cliff. That's nothing I can get over or above or past. It's beyond me because I don't know anything. I don't know enough what I need to know in order to be able to have a successful encounter at the gym. So I need onboarding. I need something that says, hey, what kind of equipment do they have at your gym? How long are you willing to spend per workout? How many times a week do you want to work out? What's the thing that you prioritize? Do you want to grow muscle? Do you want to get faster? Do you want to whatever? That kind of thing. And then the system recommend exercises for me. That's onboarding. Increasing challenge. You know, once I get mastery of something, it gets boring. So increasingly, slowly but surely ratcheting up challenge. Doing this right is hard, you know, because quite frankly, you've probably all played games or done other things where at first it's pretty easy, and then you just hit a wall, and holy cow, it's so hard. I can't get past this. That's a bad example of balancing challenge, or a slowly increased challenge. Another ways that you can make it fun and game-like is a strong sense of narrative and giving meaningful feedback to users. Okay, great. So these are big ideas. How do we integrate these things with cue, craving, response, and reward? Let's zero down into very practical applications. How do we make it so that you can actually apply this in your everyday work and specifically in Project 3? So we're going to look at some examples from real world and let's check it out. So some practical applications. If you're looking at points in virtual currency, a great app to look at is this one that's called Chore Monster. It's now been sold and then shuttered, but it was based in Cincinnati. Great company, great app. They've been acquired by a company, I think it was by Verizon, who had a change in leadership. And because of that change in leadership, abandoned it, which is a real shame. It was a really successful product. In this thing, if you're a parent, you'd assign different chores to children, and then they could get different points that they earn, and then they can spend those points on things. So you can see here, this parent set it up so that if you have 10 points, you can get a Snapple, 25 an ice cream, 75 a pizza, 100 you get a $5 bill. That's an example of points in virtual currency turned into real things. Other points in virtual currency, this is an app called Habitica. Habitica is a habit tracking app, habit building app, kind of to-do list app, but it's built as a role-playing game. And so as you do things like brush your teeth, take showers, do your homework, go to class, you get points, and you can spend those points inside the game. Here's another one. This is an app I use called Streaks. Streaks helps you track streaks. And you can see here in the red screen that this person has set up a goal of walking 11,000 steps, and it's filled in white because they have accomplished that today. And you see the little 3 underneath their body. That means that they have a streak of 3 going. To the right of that, you can see they're trying to run just south of a quarter of a mile. And then you can see above that, they've accomplished it 12 times. And the percentage of the amount of the circles filled in is how close they are to completing their goal. Badges. Super virtual badges are like a little leveling system. So these are badges that you can win inside of the activity app on iPhone for accomplishing different things. Leaderboards, another extrinsic motivator. So this is leaderboards inside of Fitbit. Performance graphs. You remember we've been saying that People are motivated by seeing a sense of progress, and progress is very slow. But if you can give them performance graphs, they can start to see what's happening. So then on the left-hand side, we see my favorite app there, Streaks, being used again. And it's saying, hey, out of all 4 of these habits that you're tracking, your best streak was 12 in a row. And you have an average completion of about 58% per day. And you can see which days you accomplish most of your stuff, which days of the week you accomplish your goals more often, what time, that kind of thing. On the right, you have another app called, oh goodness, I should know this because I use it. It is called, messing with my phone, Zones. And Zones integrates with Apple Health, and it lets you see how often you're inside of the zone of fat burn, cardiovascular strength, etc., and kind of tallies it up on a weekly basis. You can see performance graphs. Another app that I love is an app called Day One. It's a journaling app, and Day One will do things like this. On the right-hand side, you can see a calendar, and every time that you've written a journal entry, it fills it in. So you get a real clear sense of how you're doing from a performance standpoint. All right, next is meaningful stories, that narrative component. Okay, and these could be real stories, imagined stories, stories that are emergent or overlaid. And so by that I mean it could be like a real story that you're creating and that you're documenting, or it could be a narrative that you kind of fall into. And it could be something that is slowly plays out automatically based on your interactions, so it's emergent, it changes over time, or it's overlaid onto, it's a narrative that's that you're kind of dropped into. This is an app called Zombie Run, and what you do is you put on headphones and it tells you the story and kind of pretends like you're running through a post-apocalyptic world, and it tells you a story. So you might say, I want to go for a 5-minute run, and it says, okay, there are zombies right outside your door. You slowly start to jog away from them, and oh no, they see you. Now you got to run faster, and you run around the corner, and they don't see you anymore. It's okay. You can take a walk, and you can kind of take a jog. Slow down a little bit. Oh no, they see you. Got to run faster. That kind of thing. It's the same activity you're doing, running, but you're falling into a narrative, and that this app has actually been incredibly successful because they kind of fall in. They create a narrative that aligns with people's goals, and it makes it fun to go running. Next is Avatar. Not like the big blue people that live on a weird planet, but Avatar is like a virtual representation of you. This is an app called Carrot Fit, and what this thing does is let you track workouts and eating, and you're the little round character in the middle there on the scale. And if you weigh in at too heavy, it will shock you. It will shock your avatar. Or this is Habitica again, and in this app you create your own version of yourself, and then as you do different things like complete 15 minutes of cleaning or eat a healthy breakfast, you level up and you can buy new outfits for your avatar. Building on Habitica, there's also a sense of teammates in that app, and so you can have teammates that are trying to accomplish these things with you. So it's kind of like leaderboards, but it's collaborative. On the right-hand side, we have Basecamp, the task management, kind of project management software, and you have tasks that are company-wide, that are assigned to individuals, and so these teammates can kind of see what everybody's working on and how they're getting things done. Another is customized challenges or missions. Okay, so back to that workout example where you have a blank slate. The app on the left is called Fitbod, and Fitbod does exactly what I described, where you tell it what is available where you are, how long you want to work out, and what you want to focus on. And it generates a series of activities that you should do. It's a customized challenge. On the right-hand side is Headspace, a meditation app, something that helps you grow in a sense of meaning and purpose. And these are challenges, not necessarily customized, but these are challenges and missions that you can do inside of this in order to meditate. Another big, important idea inside of the gamification world is a recognition of constraints, but not just constraints like they're things that are holding you down, but constraints that are with urgent optimism. In other words, they're trying to say, hey, you can't do it all, but here's the next thing you can do, and it's going to be great if you do. And so you can see, I think Streaks is a great example of constraints. One of the interesting things Streaks does is it only lets you track 12 habits total. When I first started using it, it only let you track 6 habits total. And the idea was the developer had done some research and found that people can't really start that many habits at the same time. So instead of letting them just say, I want to do 50 things, it constrained them to only be able to do a certain number of things. On the right-hand side, you have the app MyFitnessPal. MyFitnessPal is one of these food tracking apps and weight tracking apps. And it does some really interesting things. One of the things that it does, with an urgent optimism perspective, is at the end of the day, after you log all your food and you hit submit, it pops this up. It's a little projection of how much you'll weigh in 5 weeks. Now, why does that matter? That matters because your weight is not changing that much from a day-to-day basis, but it just changed a measurable amount in a 5 weeks basis. And so what they're trying to do is say, hey, if you keep on doing what you just did, awesome, here's where you'll be in 5 weeks. Get the sense of urgent optimism in that, but there's also constraints in this app. If you don't eat enough, in other words, if you undereat what is a healthy amount for you to eat, it won't show you this because that's a constraint it's putting in place so that you don't develop any kind of eating disorder. And so by it not showing you what you'd weigh, and instead scolds you and says, hey, scold's true the wrong word. It's concerned for you. It says, hey, it looks like you're not eating enough. And so because of that, we're not going to tell you how much you're going to weigh in 5 weeks. Instead, it's trying to constrain you to eat a healthy amount, not too much, not too little, and giving you a sense of optimism inside of that. And they're getting all that just out of some text. It's not even a fancy graphic. But it's really, really powerful when you think about it. Talked about scaffolding before. Here's that app again, Fitbod. Does a great job of scaffolding, generates the exercise for you. If you don't know how to do the exercise, has a little video for you and all that kind of stuff. Gamification is powerful, gang. It's incredibly powerful. And what I want you to be thinking about when we're looking at Project 3 is how can you make your project address the whole person? So what I want you to do is pick one of these different axes of health and design an app that will help people address these different axes of health and recognize that in order to be healthy takes time. And so design the app to use gamification techniques in order to compress the time so that they get rewards much sooner than they normally would, so that you can build a sense of craving to do the good activity, and that the actual activity that's good takes a long time to get the benefit. And by creating a sense of reward, which then it creates a sense of craving of something more short-term, they'll get long-term benefits because of the gamification that you've created. So that's the next steps. What I want you to do is, complete this lecture. We're going to next look at a subject matter expert working in the health field. And then I want you to start thinking about what's the big idea of what you want to try to accomplish in Project 3.